Ambassador, you're the President's special envoy, the envoy for special affairs. Why have you come to Berlin at a situation in time when it's so tense at home?
See, the idea is to go through, of course, bilateral agenda, but most importantly at this stage, because of the circumstances, to brief our German partners and friends about Azerbaijani vision on how we should proceed further in order to save the peace process, which is now at a very crucial moment, and to seek the support of the German side to help us with facilitation of this peace process so that it is preserved and not diluted or diverted from the main track by artificially created manipulations or politicization of humanitarian issues.
That is severe accusation. So essentially you're accusing the other side of standing in the way of a proper peace process. Would you elaborate? What is your accusation there?
Well, first of all, we have to identify what is the opposite side. Well, I'm talking first of all about the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which has been going on for some time now, and which the European Union and the person of Charles Michel, the President of the European Council, tries to facilitate. So in our assumption, I think that the campaign that Armenia has now launched worldwide in order to denigrate Azerbaijan and to accuse us in all possible sins and to manipulate with the humanitarian hardships on the ground is a tactical move which is aiming at consolidating the status quo on the ground, imitating their participation in the peace process, and trying to put all the blame for the lack of progress on Azerbaijan, while Azerbaijan has on numerous occasions has proven its goodwill and its sincere desire to advance with the peace process, because it was us who proposed to Armenia the draft of the peace agreement. It is us who proposed to talk about reopening of communication lines and delimiting the state border. It is also true that we view now the separatist entity in the sovereign territories of Azerbaijan as the only responsible party in this humanitarian crisis, because they try to depict the things in black and white, accusing Azerbaijan in making their population suffer from hunger, but at the same time they basically reject any overture to find a compromise. They block the roads which are proposed by Azerbaijan, supported by every other stakeholder, to bring in all the necessary humanitarian food by other routes. So if a population is in need of humanitarian assistance or food, there is no way it can prove to anyone that they can do that by rejecting the viable solutions.
So when you're talking about the separatists, you're talking about the separatists. This is going out to an international audience, and maybe not everybody is as familiar with this particular conflict as perhaps with others. You're talking about the people, the Armenian population living in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is a recognized territory of Azerbaijan, and people are saying on the ground that there is a humanitarian crisis unfolding there because not enough medicine is going into the area, not enough food is going into the area, and there have been calls for Azerbaijan to open that one road, the Lachin corridor. Will you open that corridor?
Well, first of all, let me tell that by telling separatists, I'm not expanding this notion to all the Armenian population living in the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. I'm talking about a group of die-hard or hardline extremists who basically have made their careers being aggressive separatists. But in general, this separatist entity is the making of the Republic of Armenia, which has for almost 3 decades illegally occupied almost 20% of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized territory, including the former Nagorno-Karabakh region, but also 7 other provinces around it. Now, with regard to what you say, of course, we understand that the situation with the delivery of goods is not perfect, but it would not be correct, it would be erroneous to suggest that the Lachin road is blockaded, because, you cannot call a blockade when there is a movement going back and forth on a daily basis of ICRC ambulances and other vehicles that would bring back and forth the people who are in need of medical attention, other people who are ethnic Armenians living in Karabakh who want to use this border checkpoint at Lachin to go to Armenia, either students or school children or relatives. And also, I mean, those vehicles which are being which are transporting these people, they are used also to bring in baby food, medicaments, and all the most needed staples to the population. So this is done with the green light from the Azerbaijani government, who cares about its own population. But unfortunately, this whole population has become a hostage in the hand of a bunch of aggressive hardline separatists who do not even envisage a possibility of peaceful coexistence of ethnic Armenians and Azerbaijanis within one Azerbaijani state. As you rightly mentioned, the whole international community has recognized Karabakh region as an inalienable part of Azerbaijan Republic. So that's why we proceed from the understanding that Azerbaijan needs to reach out and engage with the Armenian population of Karabakh in order to obtain their full integration into the social, economic, and political fabric of our state. So Azerbaijan would be ready to increase the flow along the Lachin corridor. There is no blockade, there is limited access, but that could be done when the Armenians of Karabakh, I mean the separatist clique there, does not put any conditions or reject out of hand any other routes for the delivery of humanitarian assistance, because they are responsible today for the livelihood of their brethren and sisters there. We know that this opinion of rejecting the Agdam road, which is the second road to bring in humanitarian assistance, is not shared by most of the population. But these people are intimidated. They do not have the right to express themselves. Those who do are persecuted but we still want to find a solution. And Azerbaijan has shown utmost flexibility in its contacts with the major stakeholders, be it the United States or Russian Federation or European Union, in order to find a solution. Because I think that the more this situation continues, the more we are distanced from the prospect of resumption of the real peace process, where we will have to resume discussions on the draft of the peace agreement, when we have to talk about the restoration of communication links and also delimitation of the border. Unfortunately, this whole process has been taken hostage by this campaign, which is orchestrated by Armenia throughout the world, using their diaspora, their linkages in the mass media, and also they are adding oil to the fire instead of trying to convince the Armenians in Karabakh that the only way for them to continuously live in peace and security is to engage with Azerbaijan, with Baku, and not reject the opportunity of discussions between our central authorities and them.
So you say that you can guarantee that there is no genocide happening against Armenians?
Well, I would actually request all those who use this word to be very attentive, because unfortunately we have heard this word so many times in the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately there is a devaluation of this notion. If you have to read the definition of what is genocide, no one would even pronounce this word in this concrete context. And of course there are opinions of independent jurists and legal experts of international prominence who say that the allegations of any imminent genocide are factually and legally unsubstantiated. This is actually adding...
There's also the former chief prosecutor, Ocampo, who says that the criteria are fulfilled.
Well, I cannot say that. I mean, he has the right to pronounce himself. First of all, you have to approach this issue from a purely legal point of view, from the point of international law. There is no evidence which was provided by those who suggest that there is genocide in the making, that these people are exterminated because of their ethnic origin. As I said, genocide may happen only if this clique of separatists will continue to hold hostage their own population in order to get to their political goals. I think that we have to beware and to be very attentive and careful with using this very hard accusation.
But how can peace be brought back to your region? The geopolitical situation has not become any easier, and is the changing geopolitical situation part of the solution or part of the problem?
Well, I think that the only way towards peace is when two parties, which have expressed on numerous occasions at the level of their leaders their commitment to get to the final agreement, would live up to the commitments and obligations that have undertaken. In terms of Azerbaijan, we're doing our best to engage ourselves in the peace negotiations on all those three tracks, as I mentioned. Unfortunately, Armenia has failed to carry out a number of provisions of the trilateral ceasefire agreement, which was signed in November of 2020. They have not yet withdrawn almost 10,000 of Armenian armed forces from the Azerbaijan's internationally recognized sovereign territory in Karabakh. We're having 30 tanks, 50 artillery pieces, other heavy equipment. They still continue to plant mines in our territories. We have already more than 300 of civilian casualties after the signature of ceasefire. They refuse to give us accurate mine maps so that we can preserve the lives of people who are now demining these territories. They do not disclose the information about the mass graves of people whom they have executed. So all those war crimes that they have committed, we do not want now to go much into detail. It's illegal proceedings that are underway. But to respond to your question, the only way is if Armenia will not only in words but in deeds demonstrate its adherence to international law. Both Azerbaijan and Armenia at the level of leaders have committed themselves to respect from now on each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. In our case, it's also including the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, which has been recognized as such by the international community and 4 resolutions of the Security Council of the United Nations of 1993. But in practice, the declarations of Prime Minister Pashinyan, who says that he recognizes Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, including Karabakh, do not match with real deeds on the ground. Because, they still keep their forces there, they still finance from their federal budget, the separatist entity, which is illegal. And those 10,000 militias, armed forces of Armenia, have become a legitimate military target for Azerbaijan because it's a real security risk to Azerbaijani people. And that's why this is something which we have to deal with. But we can deal with that, and we want to deal with that in the framework of the peace process, when these people will be disarmed with the agreement of all parties involved, But
so
what
that is a condition for you, that these militia are disarmed before...
We don't put any conditions, madam, but what we say is that we need not to distract the attention of international community from the artificially created humanitarian so-called crisis, which is not, but to go back and to put the peace process on the rails. Because, the leaders have agreed in Brussels with the facilitation of Charles Michel and also on other occasions in other capitals that they have to intensify their work, and the peace agreement should be finalized hopefully by the end of this year. But instead, we are trying to neutralize the illegitimate attempts by Armenia to turn the whole blame on Azerbaijan and to depict us as the only responsible party in the lack of progress.
And who can mediate? Who can bring those demands? Who can actually lead those peace negotiations when you've got this severe conflict between Russia and the rest of Europe and the US?
Well, first of all, we have to take one thing at a time. In the first place, the immediate urgency for us is to address this ongoing issue related with humanitarian access. If those who are stakeholders, who are facilitating the process, which is the United States, which is the Russian Federation, and also which is the European Union, if they help us to convince the separatist leadership in Karabakh to accept the compromise solutions which were suggested by Azerbaijan, when all roads will be put into use. And that would allow us to deflate the tension, the temperature around this humanitarian problem. That would also allow us to go back to the normal track of negotiations. And there it is up to 2 countries. We consider it's essential to preserve bilateral format of negotiations. It's up to Armenia and to Azerbaijan to sort out the remaining differences on the text of the peace agreement. It is also our duty to delimitate our border so that it is considered and recognized by the whole world as such. And it is also our duty to open all the communications in the region so that a full-fledged economic activity could be covering all countries, and Armenia could finally put an end to its isolated position in the region.
News broke on Wednesday, so today, that Armenia is going to do a joint military maneuver together with the US starting on the 11th of September, so that is next week. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I have nothing to comment on that because it's a sovereign right of any country to decide with whom they do what. But apparently, maybe if it is something of a sign to us that, we are trying to do that in order to increase our military capability so that we can at some point go back to the military scenario, I don't think that this is a reasonable scenario to follow. But in any case, we are following closely what our Armenian neighbors are doing. Unfortunately, it is not only limited to what you just said. They continuously violate the ceasefire along the conditional border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We had lost 2 of our servicemen last week because of the opening of the fire by them. So these constant provocations are happening not only from the side of Armenia, but also from inside of Azerbaijan, from the territories which are now where the separatist leadership is now, and this entity continues to undermine the peace process. That's why I think that we are at a crucial moment right now when the attention of the whole world should go back to the peace process. But in order to do that, we need to convince the separatist entity to accept the reasonable and pragmatic solutions that are proposed to them.
How close are we to another war in your region?
Well, that is something that I don't want even to imagine, because I think that we need, as governments, as responsible people, we need to make sure that this scenario is completely ruled out, because this region has suffered already enough from the war. But of course there are forces which, by undermining the peace treaty and derailing it completely, they basically envisage such a scenario by pushing Azerbaijan and Armenia to another war. So I think that everyone should be cognizant and should understand very well that there is no alternative to peace. Azerbaijan wants to reiterate again, its full commitment, genuine commitment to pursue this peace track. Otherwise, we would not have proposed to Armenia right after the war to elaborate a peace agreement. So we want this to be a win-win situation and not a victor's peace. But for that, it takes two to tango, as they say. So we expect Armenian government not only to pronounce their readiness, but to demonstrate it in real actions.
What do you say to those, and perhaps this is to sum up, what do you say to those people who say that Azerbaijan is essentially preparing a casus belli, accusing Armenia of preparing another war so that Azerbaijan can then be in the position to defend itself and its interests once it decides to take action? What do you say to those people?
Well, I would request them and I would recommend them to take this with a bushel of salt, because if you look at the facts on the ground, it is not Azerbaijan who is departing from the previously taken agreements and commitments. It is not Azerbaijan but Armenia who is always provoking us on the border. It is not Azerbaijan but Armenia who refuses to withdraw the remaining occupation forces from our territory. So, if you look at the ground, you will see that this is just a pure trick of propaganda. But what we would like to say that Azerbaijan will never actually accept the situation when our territories will continue, or our territorial integrity and sovereignty will be put into question. This is something which no other any sovereign state would put up with. So that's why our request is also to the other side to basically to stop these manipulations, stop instrumentalize different institutions, stop this rhetoric which is not leading us to peace but rather bringing us closer to another confrontation, which we as Azerbaijan want at any cost to avoid.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you for your interest. Thank you.